Say the line, Bart!
Further adjustments made to elite monster density in dungeons. Ladies, gentlemen, and Harajam of all ages, they're back at it again! Blizzard have released more changes to Diablo 4 again already, and of course it's going to shake things up once more. They've said multiple times recently that a larger, proper patch is in the works and will be hitting us soon, but not giving us an actual timeline on that, so we're just sort of all sitting here ready for it, scared that our builds are gonna get destroyed. But for now, we have a brand new hotfix hitting the servers just a couple of hours ago, so let's talk about what has changed within the game, as well as some more things that the devs have been saying just in general that could lead us to understand their thinking a bit and predict a change in the future. And of course, we also had a lovely graphic released with a bunch of stats from the first release week of Diablo 4, so let's go over all of that, talk about what it means, what it could mean for the future of the game in any potential way, any hints that it could be accidentally giving us. Without further ado then, let's dive into the actual game changes themselves. The first thing that they told us is something that has been starting to become a bit of a catchphrase in these various patch notes: further adjustments made to elite monster density in dungeons. But this time, for the first time, there was actually a bit of text after it actually describing what these changes are. Specifically, what they've said is that they are attempting to standardize the density of elite monsters that spawn in dungeons to ensure that no particular dungeon is clearly more efficient to run than the others. The unfortunate part is, this still doesn't answer the question I keep asking every time they say this, and it's been in like every hotfix since the game came out. The unfortunate part is, this still doesn't answer the question I keep asking every time they say this. Did they buff the bad ones or nerf the good ones? And unfortunately, to my chagrin, we have confirmation that this means they nerfed the good dungeons rather than buffing the less good ones. Specifically, some people have been testing Ruins of Eridu, the most recent loot cave that people caught onto, and it looks like elite spawn rates have just reduced drastically, which it sucks. Let's be honest, it just sucks. A big thing that bugs me in game design philosophy is the concept of nerfs. Yes, sometimes things do need nerfing if they are just too ridiculously out of line. But in general, if something is good, if something is fun, if something is being used by players and enjoyed by players, the best way to handle it in my mind is to bring other things in line so that they are the same as the good thing. Buff the other dungeons so that they are as good to run as the ones that people are calling loot caves, right? Make everything good. Why make the good dungeons bad when you could make every dungeon a good dungeon? So I really hope that that is what they mean, but again, they are being impossibly vague as to their actual intentions, so we won't know just yet. Honestly, the same thing goes for builds too, and I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised when the next balance patch happens, and it's actually just a ton of buffs to weaker parts of classes, rather than nerfing the strongest builds, but we'll have to see on that one. I do have my doubts. As far as further changes within this hotfix specifically, we also had some legendary aspect changes, and a couple of days ago, I told you all that they disabled two important legendary aspects, essentially just removing them from the game secretly. As they didn't put any sort of notice in game that this was the case, that this had happened, it was really just sort of jarring for everyone. But now they have re-enabled these two and fixed the exploits that were going on with them. Now we can talk about it properly as well. As far as the Edgemaster's aspect, this was a legendary that was great for every class in some way, but it had a specific issue with Barbarian that made it get disabled for literally everyone for a chunk of time. The way that the aspect is intended to work is when you cast a skill, you get a bonus to the damage of that skill, depending on how much of your class's resource you have available when you press the button. The exploit here was from Barbarian specifically, where you could press your shout skills while still holding down Whirlwind, and it for whatever reason would just reapply the Edgemaster buff to Whirlwind multiple times. So you could press Whirlwind at full fury to initiate it and get 20% bonus damage, then press a shout while still holding Whirlwind and boost the damage of Whirlwind by a further 20%, press another shout, boost the damage by another 20%, so on and so forth, and obviously that was busted as hell. So I understand them wanting to fix that, I understand them wanting that not to be a part of the game. It is simply not intentional game design. It was not something they wanted, and it resulted in Barbarians just not doing what they were supposed to do. That said, the way this was handled was still quite poor in my opinion. I understand what they did, I understand disabling it in game until it was fixed to an extent, but they absolutely should have warned players in game that they had done this so people didn't have to find out the hard way by trying to use this legendary in non-exploitive ways and then just getting screwed over because they didn't know that it wasn't working. They've also reintroduced the aspect of Berserk Ripping, which was removed for the same reason, which was a Barbarian legendary that applies some of the direct damage that you deal as bonus bleed damage. But apparently this was stacking unintentionally well with the two-handed sword expertise. This has been fixed and this legendary is also back in action. Unfortunately, this means Barbarians, you're gonna feel like you're doing a lot less damage than you were before with these things, but that's because some exploits have been fixed. So if you were using using them this way, you can't use them that way anymore. Barbarians are still very strong, Whirlwind is still very strong, don't worry, you're not like nerfed into the ground, but you are weaker than you would have been if you were using these exploits, simple as that. So just in general, for everyone, Edgemasters is up and running again, which means that anyone who was using this legendary in the build is now able to actually function again because it's not disabled anymore. The exploits are gone, but the builds are back, and we can at least be happy about that, right? Past this were some just general bug fixes. Apparently some people were getting the quest to unlock World Tier 3 before finishing the main story for the first time. That is no longer the case, and they fixed the dilapidated aqueducts area, and there's further stability improvements as well for PC. All in all, as far as actual changes, this does seem quite reasonable on the whole. I'm glad that they moved fast on those legendary aspects so that they're actually enabled again. They were only gone for a couple of days, and I'm hopeful that the note about dungeon density meets an increase across the board, not a decrease in just the good ones. But time will tell on that, as they seem to be adjusting this on a nearly daily basis at this point. On a note related to previous hotfixes then, quickly, I've been saying in the last couple of news updates that there is a bug going around where world bosses on World Tier 4 only seem to spawn at level 90, dropping caches that require level 80 to open, and apparently that actually is not a bug. The reason that I thought it was, which I think is reasonable myself, is that the original patch note they gave us when this change happened was them saying that they added more level brackets to world bosses. To me, that implies that world bosses should be closer to each player's level when they fight them, but apparently what they actually did was the opposite of what that says. The level 90 World Tier 4 bosses are intentional across the board, as are the level 80 required grand caches that they drop once per week. This is unfortunate to me, honestly. Again, I wish there was just a bit more transparency going on in these patch notes. I am doing my best to tell you guys what's going on, but past a certain point, it is just speculation, because they're just not telling us. The notes are very vague. I guess just be aware that for the foreseeable future, if you do your world boss on World Tier 4, it will be level 90. The cache will require you to be level 80 to open it. If you don't like that, do world bosses on the lower tier. Otherwise, that just seems to be the case for now. If you think this is a problem, like I do, voice your opinions to Blizzard, and maybe they'll change it back to the way that it was. Aside from that, we got a couple more tweets from the developers that gave us a bit more information too. Mainly this one from a level 93 Druid who has found more than 30 Barbarian unique weapons. I feel that myself. I'm also playing a Druid. I have 3 Barbarian unique weapons so far. To my understanding, this is happening because I am able to use that weapon type, like a two-handed axe or a two-handed hammer, but it is undeniably frustrating to use all of my unique luck, see a unique drop on the floor, pick it up, and it's something that I cannot even actually use myself. Rod Ferguson, the GM of the Diablo franchise, responded to this saying that it is actually an issue that they are aware of, and they are working on fixing it, which implies that once this is resolved, the only uniques that you will have drop for you on a character are the ones that that character is able to use. That's the only real update we have from the dev team so far as future issues being fixed, but we also had this lovely graphic released by the official Diablo 4 account on Twitter, absolutely full of statistics for us to dive into. First up, players have played a total of 276 million hours between all of us over the first week of the game, which is approximately 1.27 repeating million hours played per hour since release. So there have been loads of people playing the game, and the people that have been playing it a hell of a lot too. Between us, we've killed 2.73 billion monsters, which is just an insane number to try and imagine in your head, because that's about 1/3 of the population of the planet Earth, but in monsters that are spawned from hell. We have created 166 million parties, which means that group play has been a factor, for sure, and players have died 316 million times. To put that into perspective too, that is a fair amount more people than those who died to the Black Frickin' Plague. So, you know, fairly active on that front too. 429,000 deaths in PvP, though honestly the stat that I'd really like to see there is the amount of hardcore players who've died in PvP, as those are just permadeaths caused by someone else playing with the exact same stakes, so you're both putting it all on the line. The Butcher himself has gotten nearly 5.8 million kills, which just means that nearly 2% of all player deaths in Diablo 4 have been to the Butcher. 1 in 50 deaths. Again, that is actually sort of a crazy stat when you look at it that way, because for him to be responsible for 1 in 50's deaths, that boy has been busy as hell, especially considering he can only kill you once before he disappears and runs off to his own little dimension. There are only 6,200 people or so who have reached level 100, which is honestly very understandable given how ridiculous the XP requirement per level goes up exponentially as you progress. There are only 163 level 100 hardcore players, and honestly, even that number surprises me a lot given how difficult of a feat that one is. And finally, the most popular class in the game so so far is the Sorcerer, which is interesting as well. I feel like the Sorcerer could use a bit of love. From my awareness, a lot of their currently viable endgame builds are a bit samey, all using 4 of the same defensive skills in every one of their builds, which only leaves 2 slots for variety, and that sort of stings, especially if it is apparently the most popular class. I would expect that this means that the devs will pay particular special attention to Sorcerers in the future, both in trying to make more of their playstyles more capable of managing endgame content, as well as in the Platinum Shop, the place where you can buy cosmetics with real money. So, if you're someone willing to drop a bit of cash for some cool cosmetics, and you're playing a Sorcerer, you probably have some good things coming your way. That just about does it for today then, everyone. A nice quick roundup of all of the changes in Diablo 4 for today, and oh man, I started covering these things expecting it would be every 3 days or so, maybe, but the developers are outputting new things faster than the Flash with diarrhea. Sorry for the visual, or am I? I hope you've enjoyed this quick summary then, all the bits of the newest hotfix, the little bit of info on class-specific uniques dropping for the wrong classes, and then a nice little breakdown of the stats that they released from the first week of gameplay for Diablo 4. I'll be back in a couple of days with more news, or hey, who knows, maybe even tomorrow at this rate, honestly. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.